Warning. The Outsider's Edge contains strong opinions, unconventional views, and contrarian stances. Listen, if you dare.
Hey, yo!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Outsider's Edge. It's your boy Rance, aka Ray Cash. I am here, as always, with my partner in crime, Mr. Karl Irvin. How you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. We're recording in the morning for once. That must be nice.
Sure.
Nice for me. I don't know if it's nice for you or not.
Well, see, it would be nice for me if I hadn't already recorded a full hour-and-a-half podcast this morning. But nonetheless, I'm dedicated.
Yeah, no, you are. I agree.
What's been going on in your world, man? How's things going?
Not bad, man. This is my last week of the semester. As some of you know, I'm pursuing a degree, and it's been a long semester, but I took my last final yesterday. Everything went well, and I've got about a 3-week break before I start in the summer. So that's about it, really.
So basically, you have 3 weeks of your life to live.
Pretty much. Yeah, the summer's going to suck.
Okay. Well, I don't know how I can segue from that to what we're talking about, but no, man, you're doing it for the greater good because if you don't know, Carl's going to be he's going to be the breadwinner of our relationship. He's going to take care of me, if y'all didn't know.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to be a housewife. And
Sugar daddy in the house.
All right, man. So our episodes seem to be themed. And I've been thinking about what this theme could be. And the only thing I could think is controversy, because the 2, maybe 3 things we have to talk about today are pretty hot topic items, and more specifically have been extremely highly debated and controversial in the internet, especially Twitter, this week in general. Like, the debates about these 2 situations have been some of the hottest and most debated items I've seen on Twitter involving wrestling in a while. So, I guess we might as well jump into it, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first, let's start off with intergender wrestling. I don't even know how it started. I don't even know what brought it up. But for some reason this week, intergender wrestling came under fire. Somebody, I guess, said that they don't like it, or that it's not right, and, that a man and a woman should be wrestling each other, and this, that, and the other. So many different things. And if you noticed, intergender wrestling is at its probably highest point right now, right?
Yeah, especially on the independent circuit.
Yes, but even if you want to go to WWE, Ronda and Triple H had a little run-in
Yeah.
At WrestleMania, which was the first time I think men and women have actually purposefully hit each other in a long time.
Well, yeah, well, you've also had a little bit of in the mixed match challenge they did.
Yes.
You had a little bit of teasing in certain spots. Usually just the women like interacting with the men. No, like the men weren't like willing to throw hands or anything. Not like how Triple H was at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some teasing there.
And people like Candice LeRae, who signed with NXT now, and Joey Ryan are known for their intergender wrestling. Tessa Blanchard is, I believe, the Wrestle Circus champion among some other indie company champions, and like it's becoming, I would say, less niche. It's really becoming commonplace.
Yeah.
One of my favorite wrestlers, and she's actually going to be somebody who I'm going to reference a lot in this particular conversation because of her story, but one of my favorite people in wrestling in general, Mia Yim, she injured her ankle, and she's just started coming back since WrestleMania weekend, and she has 3 major matches scheduled for the next couple weeks, and they're all against men. Matt Riddle being one of them, Andrew Everett being the other, and I think the third is Joey Janela.
Okay.
So not only are those all three marquee matches, but they're all three different styles of matches.
Right.
So first and foremost, before we get into what do you think about intergender wrestling?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's not, it's something that it's not like it's not new. We've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
WWE did stuff like this way back when. That kind of stopped when they got more into the PG era.
Mm-hmm.
For, I'm sure for reasons, sponsorship, maybe things like that, they don't want to lose dollars because companies might get upset with them showing that on television. But overall, for me, I don't really have an issue with it. I mean, if you look at to me, it's in the same vein as like anything you might see on a movie or a television show, where a woman will get into it with a man on a show or movie. And I mean, it kind of is what it is. I mean, I think if anything, it shows that women are just as capable as men are, within the same industry. Like whether it be, you can think like, this isn't like fighting, but like you think of like the NBA, right? WNBA, you've got two different leagues. And I read something the other day where, I can't remember which WNBA player it was or I think maybe it might have been Candace Parker, where she had said that, the NBA men, the players in the NBA respect us. It's the fans that,
just to give you reference, the article you're talking about, Sarah Spain wrote about Kevin Garnett's Area 21, where he always includes women and WNBA players, and he says that show and Turner Sports in general have never treated them like they're different. Kevin Garnett is just as interested in what they're doing and their talent as any NBA player. So I'm glad you mentioned that article because that was a good article this week.
Well, that's what I think. Like, and the way she put it was that it's usually fans or men that aren't athletes or men that don't play sports or whatever that just watch sports that seem to have a problem with women in these sports, right? And so I think with wrestling, intergender wrestling, it kind of brings it to the surface that hey, we're just as talented as any of these other guys, so why not let us get in the ring? And the reality is, wrestling, you're trusting other people, with your body out there, with your safety. And if you're going to have an intergender wrestling match, you would assume that the performers are going to take care of each other. Sure. So you don't necessarily have to worry about someone getting hurt intentionally. Accidentally, sure, but I mean, that happens all the time, whether it's men versus men, women versus women. So like I said, I don't really have an issue with it. I think, people who don't like it, that's fine if you don't like it. But I don't think going out there and saying they should do away with it or whatever, I don't think that's fair because it definitely has its appeal to a certain audience. So yeah, I mean, I really don't think, I really just don't see an issue with it. What do you think?
So if you know Carl and I, we tend to be pretty progressive thinkers in terms of, we're pretty inclusive as people. We try to be on the right side of things, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I know for both of us, I feel comfortable saying, including you, that we don't look at women wrestlers, women athletes as men athletes, women athletes. It's just all athletes.
Yeah, I would agree
right?
with that.
I've had my ass busted by many a woman in playing basketball in my old basketball career, and it's just fine because they're just as good. Now there is a little bit of truth to the difference in the way men and women's bodies are structured, but that doesn't stop anybody.
No, and it shouldn't. Like we said, like we kind of addressed just a second ago. I mean, when they're in there with the ring with other people, there should be protected. That's kind of the idea,
And if you go to training, any wrestling school, all the women train men anyway.
Sure.
But we wouldn't be us if we didn't talk about the controversy. Okay.
Okay.
So, and we want to have a very open and real dialogue about this. So, if you're listening, please understand, you know where we stand, but we have to be honest about this if we're gonna have a real conversation. You can't just take all the positive and hide the negative aspects. You have to talk about it all to get a full understanding of things.
Yeah.
So the only issue I've ever had with intergender wrestling, ever, has been the optics. And what I mean by that is this. We have Moose is a guy who people have said will be a tremendous WWE wrestler, and is a tremendous wrestler already. Moose will never be hired by the WWE, at least not for a while, because he has a very violent domestic violence issue on his record.
Sure.
Rich Swann just got essentially fired due to a domestic violence issue. For the record, to be completely candid, he wasn't fired because of that. He was suspended indefinitely. Once he was cleared, they both agreed to part ways. But that's still directly correlated to his issue. Okay?
Yeah, no doubt.
So what I mean by optics is this. I have no problem watching a woman and a man wrestle at all. But you have to understand, in the climate we live in now, post Ray Rice, Janae Rice, where the world seems to be a lot more, gotta hate the word, but woke, or
Right.
aware of domestic violence and how prevalent it is and can be. I feel like it could be a very confusing narrative to show, right? And I want to
Sure.
use Mia Yim for example, and I don't know, I doubt Mia Yim listens to this. If she does, please understand where I'm coming from with this. I'm not trying to use you from a negative standpoint. I think your story is truly empowering. If you don't know, Mia Yim, one of her ex-boyfriends, who's a wrestler as well, uh, physically abused her. And it took a while for her to realize that it was actual abuse because they wrestle. And she would have to ask herself, well, we're both wrestlers, so this can't be abuse, can it? And it finally hit her. And if you notice, she always has her ring finger nail purple, and that's the color of domestic violence. And a domestic violence group that she's a part of. Forgive me for not knowing the name, I'll find it. But the slogan is "Put a nail in it," and that's why she does that.
Right.
But the optics of that for somebody like a Mia Yim, with the man beating the holy hell out of her on TV or in a match, is uncomfortable for some people.
Sure.
And it's very confusing optic. For me, I'm sure it's not, because she's choosing to be a part of the match. She wasn't choosing to get the hell beat out of her. So I don't mean it in that sense. And, I realize if in a situation like this, the only person that does matter is that person who's dealing with it. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to understand and respect how people feel based on what they see and what they're able to ingest. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I see that side, and it makes a lot of sense. I'd like to say this, however, just to kind of counter a little bit here to the argument. Like,
Okay.
I understand the optics part, but I think if you're a wrestling fan, and this could be different. I'm saying it from my own perspective, so maybe it's not fair. But I feel like you need to, if you're watching an intergender wrestling match, and you don't feel like, one, that if it makes you uncomfortable, if this is the kind of thing that makes you uncomfortable, I don't have a problem with you speaking out about it. But I think it'd be wise to try and find, and I hate to tell people what to do, but it sounds like an idea that you might want to try and watch something else. I know it sounds really bad, but then the other thing to that is, I feel like you have to have a certain level of maturity to be able to separate real domestic violence from a wrestling match.
I want to interject. That's not fair. I say that's not fair because our fans can't separate a backstage rumor from reality. So
Yes.
You're asking them to separate something as nuanced as domestic violence is. And yes, I realize that might offend some people, but domestic violence is often nuanced. It's not as simple as he hit me all the time. yes, if at the end of the day, that is the thing about it. But it's so more nuanced than just, oh, she got hit sometimes,
Right.
right? So yeah, I don't think that's fair for you to say that.
Well, I get that, but see, here's the thing, like, and I understand, like, because now really you're asking me to ask a group of wrestling fans to be mature about stuff,
Yeah, and
and
that's
and
the
I'm
whole
not like,
point. They're not.
and I don't want to, I hate to be this way because I don't. There are a lot of wrestling fans out there who can understand the difference. There's also a lot who can't. So maybe a good group to think about would be like kids who watch this stuff. Okay, like it might be if you take your kid to a show, and let's say I take my own daughter to a show. Okay,
By the way, we
and
both have daughters. My
right, let's
oldest
say
is 9, your oldest is 6. Yeah.
yeah. So I say I take my kid to a show and she sees a match where, just use Mia Yim as an example, and she's wrestling Matt Riddle and she asks me, why is that man or boy or whatever, hitting that woman, right? And that's
Hmm.
a real question that a kid could ask their parent.
We'll probably
So
actually, yeah.
I would say, first of all, that as a parent of these kids, you need to be able to, you cannot take your kid to see this without having a reasonable explanation.
Hmm.
Okay. And this is not something that I'll be perfectly honest with you. As of right this moment, I don't have a perfectly good explanation for it right now. But at the same time, I also know that I wouldn't expose my kid to that until I had the answer. And I think that's fair. But when we're talking about, but forget the kids for a second, we're talking about the adult side of the equation.
Hmm.
Once again, if this is something that makes you uncomfortable, I feel like the best, I think it's okay to talk about it and speak out about it, but don't just yell into the void because you're mad about it. And that's a
Yeah.
problem that
Yeah.
people do now is they just yell into the void. They don't think about either side, because what's going to happen is you start doing that and then you're going to create conflict with the people who do like it. And then it just turns into a shouting match, which is
Yeah.
that's really the controversy is the shouting match because nobody can seem to have the proper discussion without yelling at one another about it.
Well, nobody's having a discussion. It's, well, this is how I feel and it's right. Well, no, this is
Right.
how I feel and this is right. It's not,
Right.
hey, this is how I feel. What do you think? It's
Well,
never to a discussion.
we talked about people speaking in absolutes
Yeah.
on many occasions, we're just touting things as fact or whatever. And I got into an argument with someone the other day about this online and just saying things and claiming it as fact. And then someone's trying to argue with me that, well, it is fact. It's like, no, it's fucking not. Not like the thing is, there's a lot of black and white. There's a lot of gray. Okay.
A lot more gray than black and white, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, especially, I don't have the answer for someone who's uncomfortable with this other than say your piece, be open to discussion with people who disagree with you. And for the time being, until you feel comfortable, don't watch it. If you know it's on, flip the channel for 15 minutes. I know it sounds bad. I know it's an easy cop out answer, but
Well,
I don't
it's
really have a better one.
it's the real answer, but people don't gotta accept that because we live in a world now where either everything needs to be catered to me or nothing,
Right.
and that's a bit ridiculous. But you pointed on something I hadn't even thought of, and that's kids. And so, well, let me just tell you how I run my household. My oldest daughter's 9, my youngest daughter's 6. My oldest daughter has just started getting into wrestling.
Right.
And I really feel like a big conduit is just to spend more time with me. Um,
Sure.
and I'm sure that's initially what all of us did, but I say that because she didn't care about it for the longest, and all of a sudden, just overnight, started caring about it and wanting to watch it with me all night. And I love it. Anything we
Sure.
can do to
Yeah.
spend more time together, I love. But I bring all this up to say this. The one thing I tell both of my girls, anytime we ever watch wrestling, we watch MMA, we watch anything with any fighting in it, is I make sure to go above and beyond to explain to them that this is completely, well, in wrestling's perspective, this is all scripted, but especially when I'm watching anything, that you need to understand this is entertainment. These people have trained for this for most of their lives to be able to do this properly, correctly, and safely.
Right.
So I don't ever want to catch you girls doing anything like this at school with your friends or anything. If I do catch you, it's gonna be the worst trouble you've ever been in
Right.
because this is not something that you have been prepared, trained, or or have learned to do correctly, or even have the right to do as a 9-year-old or a 6-year-old.
Right.
And that's before we even start the show.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think that's important, on this kid aspect, is to be able to have those conversations. And if you can't, or you're not, or you haven't thought of a way to explain it, which Rance just gave you, if you're listening, a great way to explain it. But if it's something you're not comfortable with having that conversation yet, because I'm not one of these people that's like, this happens a lot now too. And this is just outside of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
When a kid asks us something and we don't know how to answer it, right?
Mm-hmm. It happens all the time, actually.
Well, yeah, but people love to get after that parent, like, oh no, this conversation will be so hard. But like, a lot of people that say that don't have kids. A lot of people that say it do. Yeah. And I think we have to be mindful of, when we're talking about this PG audience, this younger audience, and maybe, as adults listening to this, y'all don't want to hear all this crap. But the reality is, a lot of this stuff is tailored for kids,
Well,
they want kids
was
watching.
Catered to kids, but yeah.
So these conversations have to be had, and parenting is not easy. Okay. Like, no matter what anybody wants to tell you, if anybody thinks it is, they're full of shit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you have to have discussions about, and you have to be extra careful because kids take you at your word.
Yes.
They trust you. They take you at your word. So if you're not ready to have that conversation yet, I think that's okay, and once you have the skill set or whatever, once you have it ready and you're ready to have that conversation, then you can have it. That doesn't make you a bad parent if you're not ready to answer a question immediately. I don't believe that. But some people will tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
So
best policies. If you don't know how to answer that question, tell them, baby, I don't know how to answer that.
Right. So right now, with this in mind, I mean, it's a very touchy subject. I'm glad we talk about it because for us who've been watching wrestling for years and years and years and been watching it since they were doing intergender wrestling, and this isn't some new thing, that we're used to this. We can watch this and be like, oh, okay, we know what's going on here. That doesn't mean, but we're also not victims of domestic violence. So if we're a woman, who's a victim of domestic violence, or even a man for that matter, and this makes you uncomfortable, that's fair.
Well,
that isn't fair to me.
I think what you're getting at is that everybody has the right to feel how they want to feel about things.
Sure.
Based on their experiences, right? And that's very true. But the thing you said about kids that was so poignant that kind of hit me in a way I wasn't expecting to hit me was when you talked about how do you explain to them the difference. Because I know when I watched wrestling when I was a kid, if I saw somebody do something, we went on the playground and did it at school the next day.
Right. Oh, yeah, sure.
I can't tell how many times I've pedigreed people in the sandbox.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I
did the same thing. Absolutely.
So the fear is our children are going to, this is with all wrestling, not just intergender wrestling. This is just all wrestling, MMA, all fighting in general. All combat in general, I think is a better word to use. But I guess one of the fears is having little girls go fight little boys on the playground. Now, maybe if we want to be really meta about this, to take a bigger macro stance than this little micro stance we're taking, I think a bigger societal change is looking at men and women as equals, and not thinking of, oh, a little boy can't fight a little girl. But then that's where the confusion comes, because in society, normally art reflects our society, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why wrestling has gotten to the levels it's gotten, because what we saw in wrestling reflected our society in a very abstract way. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the voice of millions of unheard, unappreciated workers, or lesser than people who don't have the don't haves, whatever. I'm sure there's a term for them, who their boss or their person who's over them, who was, for a lack of a better term, oppressive or not fair or mean. He was the conduit for so many people to live vicariously through him, because what he was doing was liberating for them, and they wanted to do what he did, but they couldn't because it's real life.
Right. Voice of the voiceless.
Voice of the voiceless. Daniel Bryan was a conduit for every underdog who's been told you're not good enough. And he broke through. Hulk Hogan was the guy who, when you're living through the Cold War and you're scared that Russia's about to bomb us every day, he comes out wearing the red, white, and blue, flexing, talking about say your prayers, eat your vitamins. Like, John Cena's a Superman for little kids. Little kids who go out in the world and are scared of what the world is, and he tells you no. All you gotta do is hustle, be loyal, and have respect, and you'll be fine. So that's what wrestling is, even on the negative aspects. It is abstract art that's being reflected by that society is reflecting. Intergender wrestling is the opposite, which makes it so interesting, or so even in the same breath controversial. Because in society, if I were to go slap a woman right now, I'd be arrested.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Not only would I be arrested, I'd be a pariah. Hopefully I would, yes. Hopefully the law would prosecute me to the fullest extent. But if I'm in wrestling and I go slap a woman, that's part of the show.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so interesting. And even if you want to look at it again from another aspect from another aspect of entertainment, look at the Marvel movies, right?
Right.
Black Widow, it's all of them fight. All of the women fight other men, right?
Yes, they do.
And to use Infinity War, the three main women in Infinity War were Black Widow, Okoye, and Scarlet Witch, right?
Yep.
And there's one point in the movie, if you haven't seen it yet, it's not really a spoiler alert, but one point in the movie where all three of them got each other's back, and they were like, well, why the hell were we doing this the whole time? Because they were killing it, right?
Right.
But the difference between wrestling and that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so overtly cinematic. We know, like, there's nothing about that says that could happen in real life.
Sure.
We've already accepted that before we even started the show. Wrestling, we haven't accepted that because we treat these people like they're real people.
That's true.
What's the joke that all non-wrestling fans give wrestling fans that we always talk about, the thing we hate the most? You know it's fake, right?
Right, it's fake, yeah.
So people still think in 2018 that us as wrestling fans don't know that it's not real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the legitimate conversation comes in, because I'm fine with it. You're fine with it. We can compartmentalize and suspend our disbelief and understand, and we feel about women and men that they're equal enough that we can understand what it is. But I guarantee you, if me and you were sitting on the bench right now at a park and some dude came and clocked a woman, we'd go over there and beat his ass.
Right.
So then I think that's where the legitimate conversation is, because it is a tough conversation. And while I appreciate the fervor of what a lot of the wrestlers were talking about this week and standing up for Undergender wrestling, I think that they're being the slightest bit unfair to the people who have pause about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's, we kind of, it's a weird dynamic, because we're in a society now where we got one half of society is very much about being sensitive towards
everything.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm not saying that negatively.
Not at all.
And then we've got another half who's really not interested in that. Like no participation trophies, that kind of stuff. Like you lose, you lose. It's a life lesson.
Yeah.
And I fall very much in the middle on a lot of that stuff. So, I can be sensitive towards some things, and at the same time, I'm not a big fan of participation trophies. I can be that person. That's just me personally. Everybody's different. But it's funny and it's interesting that in one vein you can be sensitive towards domestic violence or victims of anything, racism, any kind of oppression or whatever. You can be sensitive towards those people. But yet when someone comes into your world and says, I don't like what you're doing, this is uncomfortable for me or whatever, all of a sudden the switch is flipped and you're being insensitive towards their feelings just because they're coming after you now. It's easy for people to come after others, but once someone comes after you and you turn on the defensive, well, you're just like everybody else. You know what I mean? You're just like everybody else that's insensitive. So
Absolutely.
and I'm not trying to shit on any of these wrestlers because I understand they are standing up for their profession and the way they make their money.
And standing up for the women who have every right to be in the position that they've been put in.
Sure. But I do feel like instead of just brushing people off and calling them an idiot or whatever, like some of these people like to do, I think we need to at least sit down and try and understand their point of view without, and on the flip side, the people that are coming after these wrestlers about this stuff need to come at them in a way that's respectful.
Well,
you can't just run up. Yeah. You can't just run up on them and say, this makes wrestling bullshit or this, you know what I mean? Like how people love to do this, killing the business and all that dumb shit. Like, have a conversation. If you're uncomfortable with it, you're uncomfortable with it. If you're complaining just because you say it's killing the business, to me, you don't care about domestic violence. Yeah. To me, you're just a sexist at that point. You're just saying that because you don't think women can do. Yeah. And that is where there's a different line. If you're truly uncomfortable, I want to have a conversation. If you're just saying it to bitch about wrestling, I don't want to have that conversation with you.
Well, to your point, being uncomfortable is you openly and honestly saying, it's not that I don't care, I just don't know.
Right.
And I want to know.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I feel
like those people that are uncomfortable will come to those people in a manner that lets that be shown. That makes sense.
And for the record, the wrestling world, the world in general, but especially the wrestling world, has become a lot more inclusive recently. I mean, the Kenny Omega Kota Ibushi storyline could be very, 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 very clearly, could be very, very easily interpreted as a gay lover storyline.
Sure.
Right?
I guess so.
We're fine with that.
Right.
Velveteen Dream is extremely ambiguous, and for all you know, he could be gay, he could be not. Dalton Castle, same thing. We don't care. It's great. They're great performers. They're great storytellers.
Right.
We watch women's wrestling now, and the first thought isn't where the boobies at anymore.
Right.
Sure. So I feel like we have evolved as a society, but this is one that isn't matching what is happening in society, which is why, as we've talked about for 20 plus minutes, why it's a real conversation, because it goes against everything that we're taught as people.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. And I'm glad we're talking about it because this is good. We're not like, it's so, like I said before, it's very easy to shrug off people's feelings about this or whatever as just, they're idiots, they don't know. It's not, like you said, it's not fair.
No,
so
it's not. As long as you're coming from an honest and respectful standpoint, no, it's not.
Right.
And to be fair, that's with a lot of things. And I don't want to talk too much about society and not about wrestling, but there's a lot of changes in the world that have happened over the past 10 plus years, and I'm fine with all of them.
Right.
In fact, I am a proponent of all of them. I believe in individualism. Be who you are and live your truth. I'm a fan of it. But I understand that there were a bunch of people who aren't used to what's happening and aren't comfortable. And I feel like so many people will come up and say, well, look, I'm not against it, but I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't know how to deal with this yet. And people take that as, well, you're intolerant. And that's not fair.
Right.
As long as you're coming from it from a respectful and loving place, that's not fair, because we all don't get everything. There's stuff I still don't get.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
I don't get the New Day.
Right.
Right.
Well,
and I'm a fan of theirs. I don't get it.
You can't be one of those people, like, what do we call them? Fake woke, right? You can't be one of those people who is all about having these discussions when it's the discussion you believe in. and then when it's not the discussion you believe in, all of a sudden you're this, that, and you're telling them that they're this, that, and the other. No, that's not like, this is why I get so angry about, like, just society as a whole, forgetting wrestling for a second, trying not to get off, but like, get off wrestling. I understand it's a wrestling show.
Yeah.
But it works well with it because nobody's willing to actually really have a conversation. A lot of people say they're willing to talk about stuff, but really all they want to do is just yell, like I said earlier.
Well, no, Carl, they want to talk about it, but they don't want to listen.
Right.
And when you say talking about something, that implies that it's a two-way conversation. So you talk and then you listen. People don't want to listen anymore.
Yeah. They just more or less they want to say what they have to say and not listen to what you have to say.
Absolutely.
So nobody really ever learns anything.
No.
And that's a big problem, and it goes deeper than the world of wrestling, but in the same vein of wrestling, it is the same thing. we can sit here all day long and argue about wrestler A versus wrestler B, and I can tell you why wrestler A's push is legitimate, and you can tell me why wrestler A's push is bullshit. But if we're not actually like talking about it and actually going into the details, we're just yelling things that, our own data that we've got, and not listening to the other side, then we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, that's exactly what we're about to move on to. But before we do, I want to put a bow on this intergender wrestling conversation by actually finishing with the wrestling topic. I think the biggest opportunity in mainstream wrestling for an intergender storyline is right in front of us with Candice LeRae and Tommaso Ciampa. Do you think they pull the trigger on that? Because I know you don't watch NXT, but you know that she's gotten more and more involved as time has gone on.
Yeah.
And she actually got, spoiler alert here, she actually got hit. She actually took a bump of some sort. I don't know if he hit her or he pushed Johnny and he fell on her some kind of way. But in the tapings, the past 2 nights.
Right.
So do you think it's a possibility? Because if there's any human being on God's earth who is known for, from a female standpoint, is known for intergender wrestling more than anybody, it's Candice LeRae.
Sure. Yeah, I do think it's a possibility because I'll say the reason why I say that is because it's NXT.
Yeah.
Because NXT is the place where I feel like you can get away with
creative liberty
doing it and seeing how it goes. It's like the first generation problem, like kind of sacrifice to see how it's going to go over.
Yeah.
With the more casual audience,
they also have the smartest fan base of mainstream wrestling.
Sure.
WWE mainstream.
Right. So I think I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I could see it being a possibility, especially we know who's running NXT down there.
Yeah.
And it's the same guy who just let himself get his ass whooped by Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania.
Over and over and over again.
Right. So I think they could be inching towards that down the road. And Candice LeRae would be a perfect choice, obviously, with her experience doing it. And, like you said before, and as we all know, she was in a tag team with Joey Ryan.
Yeah.
So this isn't anything new for her.
And take away all of the firsts and the side ramifications. From a story standpoint, that's gonna be a bomb story because you want Ciampa to get some heat.
Oh yeah.
God, the heat he'll get by attacking Candice LeRae.
Yeah.
Good. The heat that he's already, people already say he's the best heel in wrestling. If he attacks Candice LeRae in this climate in the WWE, he might be top 5 heel all time.
I'm telling you. I mean, the dude, it really is a good story that you could use.
Yeah.
And NXT is the place to do it.
Yeah. Johnny keeps getting over on him, so why not attack his wife? If you're thinking from just a strictly wrestling standpoint, that's what happened on the movie.
Sure.
So, I thought that was important for us to talk about, though, because us, we're not scared of any topic.
No.
So let's get a little more conventional, and we got some Dave Meltzer stuff to talk about. So, 2 things that Big Dick Daddy Dave talked about this week that tore the interwebs up. First and foremost, let's talk about everybody's favorite wrestler, Roman Reigns.
Oh, God damn it. Yeah, go ahead.
I set it up. Actually, both of these conversations are about Daniel Bryan, but this one is particularly about Roman Reigns. Dave Meltzer has reported that the WWE is, I think about it and it just annoys the hell out of me, that the WWE is trying to recreate the Daniel Bryan story with Roman Reigns. Not only is trying, but have been trying for the past couple months with Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and I guess Vince McMahon, even though he's been on TV once throughout the whole feud. But and see, the thing that bothers me with this, I got a column coming out Monday about this very idea, not this topic, but the idea. The thing that scares me about this is, and part of the reason why I don't like Dave Meltzer, I respect his credentials, I respect his journalism, I respect the niche he's built for himself. But what bothers me is he doesn't appreciate nor realize the platform he holds and what he and what people believe based on the things he says. And the
Right.
narratives they create based on what he says. So what he's doing, and I think he knows it, but maybe he doesn't. And I want you to jump in here because you probably may be able to talk about this better than I can. What he's doing right now is furthering a narrative that isn't being pushed on television.
Right.
You know, it's like if you want to get, it's the old Colin Cowherd statement that he says that, you know, if you're in the middle of July, there's nothing to talk about, and you're on a radio show, Kobe LeBron, who you got? The line's gonna blow up.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
Brady Manning, who's better? Line's gonna blow up because they're polarizing figures who people are always going to talk about. So if you want to talk wrestling, you want to get the needle moving, Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan. You know?
Yeah. No, I agree.
So
Um,
let me know what you think.
so here's, first of all, I wanted the very first thing. They are not recreating the Daniel Bryan story with Roman Reigns. They're recreating the Daniel Bryan story with Daniel Bryan. I just want you guys to
I'm gonna
understand.
cut that and post that. I love that.
It's pretty much, it seems pretty obvious already, and I could be wrong about that, but it feels like that's where they're headed with Daniel Bryan, way more so than where they're headed with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, as a matter of fact, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but if anything, if they were pulling the trigger on anything we've been wanting them to pull the trigger on, I
You'd
feel
want a
like they'd be
match.
getting closer to going, and I don't think they are, but I feel like they'd be going closer to him going heel before they were going closer to him being an underdog. He can't win. He can't beat nobody right now. He beat Joe at the pay-per-view. Okay.
Yep.
Can't beat Brock. Couldn't get, his whole character centers around winning that Universal title. That's literally all he wants to do is win the Universal title.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't beat Brock the two chances he's had. And well, I mean, if you want to count WrestleMania 31, whatever, but recent memory, couldn't beat Brock. And there's an argument to be made that he got screwed at the Greatest Royal Rumble. Couldn't win the Money in the Bank match, the qualifier, because Jinder Mahal got involved. Like, Roman Reigns, no matter what he does right now, cannot get his hands around that Universal Championship, despite getting opportunities after opportunity to go for it. So if anything, it doesn't make him the underdog, because you can't be the underdog if you're constantly given opportunities to go for titles. Daniel Bryan was the underdog because he couldn't beat people. It was more of like he's losing to people he shouldn't be losing to. Not even necessarily he shouldn't be losing to, but you know what I'm saying? Like, his story is like, he's small and everyone's bigger than he is. And that's what an underdog is. Roman Reigns is right there at the table with everybody.
Well, okay, so hold on. For first and foremost, I do have to disagree slightly. The word underdog has such a broad painting. Roman Reigns does seem to continually work from underneath in his matches. And
Okay.
that I can understand that could be a bit annoying because much like Cena did in the mid 2000s, the prevailing thought is that Cena's going to come back and win. LOL Cena wins, right?
Yeah.
Well, all those LOL Cena wins matches, he was beat up the 90% of the match and came back 5 moves to Doom 1. And
Right.
Roman consistently hasn't done that a lot, but recently here he's done it a lot because he's fought nothing but horses. You know,
Yeah,
so he has had to fight from underneath. When he fights guys close to his size or smaller, Ambrose, Rollins, Balor, people like that, AJ, it's more of an equal match, much like Undertaker was back in the day. Taker's best matches were people smaller than him.
Yeah.
So yes. So from that standpoint, I can understand why people say he's an underdog in that respect because he's underneath. But the difference in the stories is Daniel Bryan from the story, right? The company didn't want Daniel Bryan to win. Bryan would win, and then he'd screw him. Bryan would win again, and then he'd screw him. And then Bryan would continually get over on them, but then they screw him to push him back.
Right.
This story, Roman Reigns ain't winning.
No, he's not.
It'd be different if he beat Brock and then all of a sudden they screwed him. He lost both matches easily. And yes, you could say that he was quote unquote screwed at the Greatest Royal Rumble, but here's the fact. the ref, if you look at the video, and it's very clearly the ref could have made a mistake.
Right.
This wasn't what was the pay-per-view where during that Bryan run where I want to say it was Battleground. Maybe where Bryan beat Randy Orton and Scott Armstrong did a 3 count. And on Monday on Raw, Triple H came out and said, "Did you do a fast count?" And he was like, "Yeah, I did." And they took the belt from Bryan. That's a story. This ain't no story.
No, I agree.
If it was a story, wouldn't there already be a rematch?
Sure. Yeah.
Announced?
I would imagine so. Yeah. So they kind of moved. They moved right along past it. You know, it wasn't like there was no. They didn't even really address it. I mean, Roman, I guess, kind of addressed, and not really, but like, so if you think about it though, and like you said, underdog's a broad term. On the Raw side of things, everybody's basically a fucking underdog because nobody can beat Brock Lesnar. Like, we're all an underdog to Brock Lesnar. He is the guy. Yeah. So if you, no matter, and trust me, I don't like him either, but the reality is, if you want to get technical, they're all underdogs. Finn Balor is an underdog. Sami Zayn is an underdog. I mean, even though they're heels, even though he's a heel, who cares? Yeah. They're underdogs. They can't be Brock Lesnar.
It's fan perception. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Can I throw some stats out to you about Roman Reigns real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
2 stats. Number 1, there's a perception that Roman Reigns never loses, especially on pay-per-view, right? His record for the past 3 years on pay-per-view is 17-21.
Yeah, it's trash. Not even. I mean, he's losing more than he's winning. Yeah.
It's number 1. Number 2, and this one was very interesting to me. Roman Reigns' last day as champion, 2 years ago, by the way. Yes, 2 years ago, since he was the champion. For those in the back, is the first day Okada won his title, and Okada ain't lost that belt yet.
I did see that one.
That's very telling.
Well, here's the other thing about that. That's not even the Universal Championship. That's the WWE Championship. I mean,
he's never won the Universal title.
Yeah, he's never been the Universal Champion.
Yeah, because Brock has decided Brock must farm and must keep that belt.
Right.
But to get back to the kind of comparison between the two, now I will say this: there is very clearly a story which we've affectionately called conspiracy theory Roman. Right?
Oh yeah.
Where Roman is blaming everybody he can, and Joe very eloquently pointed this out. He's blaming everybody he can as to why he's losing his matches. Not that I got beat, but I got beat. But if this and this and this, yeah, Brock beat me, and I'm a man. I'm own up to it. But but I didn't know that he was gonna do this, and so it's very clearly leading to something.
Well, that's why I said before, if they're leading to anything, in my opinion, it would be him. I don't even know if turning heel is the right word anymore, but snapping, or you know what I mean, like, which lends itself to heel work, which he's pretty good at anyway, and he does in his matches sporadically as it is.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Me and Jordan had a very, very, actually people seem to love the episode, but a very heated episode the other day where we had this conversation about Roman Reigns, because the conversation stemmed from a tweet from somebody who I don't know who he is, but apparently people say he's gave incredible news before. Okay, but that was saying that with the fans leaving Backlash, however they left, I've already argued that. But anyway, that not only was Vince McMahon shocked, but it was meant to be eye-opening for him. That's how the Roman Reigns conversation started. So I finally, to kind of make my point, I asked Jordan, because Jordan is very, very clearly, adamantly, and happily a Roman Reigns detractor. He respects the dude because he realizes the dude is talented, but he thinks Roman Reigns has been pushed way further than any human being should be pushed.
Okay.
Especially considering how he's not, as the fans continue to use the word incorrectly, over. That's not true. He's very over. He might not be over as a baby face, but he's very over. But I asked him this. Jordan, what do you think? What does Roman Reigns do That is what a face would do. And don't tell me what the announcers say. But what does Roman Reigns do from the moment he enters the arena to the moment he leaves the arena that you would consider that is face-ish? And Jordan struggled to find something. So
Right.
the one thing he found, actually, well, he said two things. One of them I kind of disputed, and he kind of tended to agree with me. But one of them was his catchphrase, "This is my yard." And I was like, okay, well, he said, and his reason was, well, John Cena said stuff like that, this is his yard. And I was like, okay, I can accept that. But the difference is, John Cena's catchphrases and what he says is coming directly from him. John Cena made up his own stuff. Romans took that from The Undertaker. And he started using it prominently after he beat The Undertaker and effectively, from what we thought, retired the guy. Does that sound like something like a face would do to you?
No. Not really.
But the only other thing the argument I would accept was the "Uwa" chant before he does the spear. Okay, I can get that because that's something faces do before they hit their finisher. They chant. Now, revisionist history would point out that he's been doing that since the Shield. But who am I to point that out? I can respect that. But most of his complaints about Roman stem from what the announcers are saying about him, because the announcers are building him up as a face, in his opinion. And I'm getting to a point. And I argued, well, is Elias a face or a heel? Well, he's a heel. Well, why do you think he's a heel? Well, he does this, this, and that. Well, Michael Cole's the biggest Elias fan in the company. So, and we've established that Graves is the heel, Cole is a face, and Coach is just Coach. So, if the face of the announced team, the voice of reason for the fans, is singing Elias's praises, then surely he's a face, right? Well, no, because he's not doing face things. My point exactly.
Right. I think it's a good argument. I think that a lot the things that, just to kind of not even defend Jordan, because I agree with you, and I have a broader point about Roman anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think Elias, when the things that Elias does are so much more blatant.
Yes.
That it's very easy to kind of differentiate with him, even though, and Michael Cole, yes, he is like a face commentator, but everyone thinks Michael Cole's a douchebag. So, but that's not the point. But you're right, though. I get your point. My thing with Roman is, and we've talked about this before.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about Roman Reigns until people stop listening to us, probably. But the thing about Roman is, to me, he's neither heel nor face. I've never really seen him as either one. I've always seen him as a tweener. Like, he can do both things.
Yeah.
And to me, his character has simply been, for a long time now, to be the champ, to be the top guy. And I think that's, from his perspective, that's what he wants. It's his yard, right?
And
he's obviously telling you.
And to live up to his bloodline.
Sure.
Yes, those are the two things, yes.
So, I mean, he does, for him, he's going to do what it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, when he had against Brock Lesnar, he's beating his ass with a chair in the steel cage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because that's what he thought he had to do to win the match.
Mm-hmm.
So, and hitting people with chairs is typically a heel thing, right? Yeah, but again, in other matches, when he's against someone of equal footing, and let's face it, Brock Lesnar is not of equal footing. If you're following the story, he's not. Brock Lesnar, nobody is equal.
Yeah.
But anybody else that Roman gets in the ring with would usually be considered his equal. So he doesn't have to do all that shit. He just has a regular match, win or lose. You know what I mean? So in that regard, maybe he works more of a face style. He has an offense, like his offensive style to me, because he has he doesn't sit around and do a lot of rest holds. He does a lot of clotheslines, and he's got the Superman punch, and he's got the spear. He's got a very face friendly offense to me.
I disagree with that, but I can understand the argument.
But, that's either way, he's just there. He's in the middle. And I think that might also be part of the problem, is because nobody really knows, because we're just, kind of not speculating, but we're just kind of looking at it, and this is how we see it. And I think a lot of people, because they love black and white, we want to know, what is this guy? I think a lot of people don't accept that it's hard to it's hard to get behind someone where we don't really know what he is. Like some guys, we know what they are. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's part of the problem. I think with him personally, before you jump back in, I just think with Roman, I don't think he's been pushed too hard or whatever. I mean, I can see where there might be a little bit of, I don't know what the right word is, but there's, exhaustion.
Yes.
But I think for him right now, I think just not even like going like full 360 or 180, whatever, but full 180, but just maybe a little bit of a different direction, which maybe is what they're doing right now. You know, whether it's a little feud here with Jinder Mahal or whatever that, you know, whatever's going to come of that. But I don't think keeping him away from the title scene is what I mean, because he's Roman Reigns. He's not going to be away from the title scene. He's always going to be lurking. But I think, you know, directly out of the path of Brock Lesnar right now, unless they've got something good for me to really get behind, I'm okay with that. But I'm not like one of these people that's like, get him off my TV. I don't think people are walking out on. I really don't. I mean, I don't know.
No, they weren't walking out on him. If you've ever been to New York, you know how bad traffic is in New York, New Jersey. And a pay-per-view, a regular pay-per-view, not a big four, a regular pay-per-view is scheduled for 3 hours. The show went till 11:45 Eastern time.
Yeah.
They had to get home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do believe that some of it was that. And maybe people have just reached their wits end with Roman Reigns. I'll accept that argument. My counter argument is, when have they done it before?
Oh yeah, it's definitely an outlier. If you see it happening all the time.
Right. So if it happened before, like you said, yes, perfectly. If it happened all the time, hell yeah. Time to push Roman away, because the crowd isn't, but the crowd is still very clearly responding. Boos are response people. The crowd always is there except for that one time. I'd bet money that they're not gonna walk out on him ever again. That was just a completely, the time to walk out on Roman Reigns, if you really wanted to, was WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Nobody did.
No, of course not.
Yeah, no, they're not gonna do it. But so man, you know, this Roman Reigns situation, man, it's frustrating to continue to talk about it, because getting back to the point about Meltzer and his report, and more importantly, Meltzer not realizing the narrative he's setting. First and foremost, all I had to hear all year was, well, Roman Reigns is going to get coronated at WrestleMania. And I'm not interested in the whole WrestleMania build. I'm not interested in the year until Reigns gets coronated and we can move on. Right?
Yeah.
Meltzer pushed that. Every chance Meltzer got, Roman's going to win the title. Roman's going to win the title. I, being the idiot of the group, kept saying, well, nothing shows on TV. Until you build to it on TV, it ain't going to happen. What's wrong with you, Rance? You ain't paying attention? Okay.
This is the same guy who doesn't even care for The Miz that much either.
Sure.
Who just so happens to be, in my opinion, right now, might be the best guy on the whole fucking roster. Overall, the total package.
Sure,
I've said
between
that
him
before.
and Seth right now, yes.
You're right. And so, you know, whatever. Like, you know as well as I do, and all of our homies here at Social Suplex are going to hate to hear it, but they know it. I don't give a fuck about Dave Meltzer and his opinions. I don't. Like, I'm not saying I'm not saying I don't respect his work,
sure,
or that he is not legitimate. I mean, I make jokes about him being a hack. That's mostly just me being an asshole. But Dave, like you said before, he's made a career out of this. He found a way to do it. He found a way to monetize it. Good for Dave. I got no problem with that. And Dave is right sometimes. Okay. Dave gets a lot of things right, but he's not perfect. Okay. And I also think, here's my perfect, honest opinion, why he's so, because right now he's been going on lately about how badly Daniel Bryan's already being booked. It's been what, 2 months?
Well, hold on.
A
We ain't
month
there
and a
yet.
half?
We're not there yet.
Okay, so that's coming. Good.
Yeah,
we'll save it, because then I can shit on Dave some more. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's next. I want to put a bow on this Roman thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's what I'm finished with this. We can move on to that, because that was the next part of it. This is the Attack Dave Meltzer hour by the Outsider's Edge.
Oh, wow.
But when it comes to Roman, the narrative he's setting, I mean, think about like I said, all year, everything that's supposed to been expected to happen. But Roman's won out of 13 pay-per-views. He's won 4 matches,
Yeah.
and one of them was a 6-man tag with the Shield, who never loses.
Right.
So and then this is my problem. Yes, he gets a lot of stuff right, and I care about what he says because it's relevant, but I don't believe everything he says. But the issue I have with him and all wrestling journalists, which is part of what I'm going to talk about in my column, is you get all the credit when you're right, sure, but when you're wrong, nobody comes out and says, "Well, I was wrong." It's always plans changed. There's no accountability. Plans change every day.
Lack
We
of
know for a
accountability,
fact that
no credibility.
yes,
That's more than anything else, because
Yeah.
if you can't be willing to say, okay, if you're going to take all the heaps of credit when you get it right, cool.
you got to take the negative,
But you got to take the heat
bad.
when you're wrong, man.
Yeah.
And that's,
How many
whatever.
times have we seen Raw where the show has started and the script ain't even finished yet?
Yeah.
So plans are always changing. That's not an excuse when you have thousands of people believing what you're saying and building narratives off of it. Because think about the narratives with everything that Roman Reigns does. Roman Reigns gets pulled out by Jinder Mahal. Well, now they're trying to get Roman cheered against the one guy who they can get cheered against. Why can't it just be a good feud?
Basically, you know what it is? Dave Meltzer is the Donald Trump of professional wrestling.
Yeah, we might need to stop there.
He's pushing narratives, damn it.
We might need to stop
people
there.
to believe him. No, sorry. Okay.
The thoughts of Carl Irvin are not. Oh my God, we might not. Wow. Yeah. Woo. I don't want to. I don't look. I like touching hot stuff. I ain't touching that one.
That's fair.
So
Nancy.
we got to move on now. You got to move on now. Further Dave Meltzer thing is, you alluded to it. This is the most incredulous, like that word, thing I think I've heard in a long time. Dave Meltzer believes that Daniel Bryan is not going to be pushed as a top tier star anymore because he lost to Rusev. And in turn, believes that Bryan should leave in September when his contract is up.
Before you even say anything.
Yes.
I have to. I'm sorry.
But
the
floor is
the
yours.
The only reason Dave Meltzer is believes Daniel Bryan should leave is so Dave can go watch his matches and covering them on the fucking indies. That's all it is.
Tokyo Dome.
I'm telling you right now. You think I'm kidding?
The
dude I'm not saying he's anti WWE, but in recent years he's not been high on their product. He's been higher on other stuff, New Japan, stuff like that. And that's fine. I have no issue with that. He's always been into the Japanese wrestling.
We all have our biases, yes.
Yeah, and that's fine. But he knows damn good and well that if Daniel Bryan left the WWE, one of the first places he'd probably go is Japan.
Absolutely.
He knows it.
Absolutely.
And Dave Meltzer wants that because Dave Meltzer wants that coverage. He doesn't get to go. He doesn't go to WWE shows. Not that much. He's never there.
And then I'd also add this. That Dave Meltzer is, and I'm going to compare him to something. I don't mean it's going to sound disrespectful. I don't mean it to be disrespectful. Carl don't really give a shit, but I don't mean it to be disrespectful. But Dave Meltzer is essentially TMZ, which means that the news he reports directly correlates to the views that he gets.
Right.
Right. So if he reports right now that Zack Ryder isn't getting a push, nobody's going to read that shit. But if he reports right now that Daniel Bryan is thinking about leaving, that's 100 million. That's 1 million views instantly.
Yeah. He's trying to sell subscriptions.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm alluding to. So that him saying this now, first and foremost, Daniel Bryan's never said that. Daniel Bryan has said, "I want to be with WWE no matter what happens. The only way I'll leave is if they don't let me wrestle." They not only let the dude wrestle, but they've pushed him upon his. I'm sorry, they're not pushing him according to Dave Meltzer. But anyway, Daniel Bryan hasn't said this, alluded to this, nothing. This is all something that Meltzer is coming up with. So now, what is it? May 11th? We have what? So June, July, August, September. We have essentially 3 full months 4 months technically, if you count what's left of May. 4 months of speculation that was never there before of, is Daniel Bryan gonna leave? And you know who's going to profit from that? Dave Meltzer. So people don't see what he's doing. And I ain't even mad at him because that's wonderful business. It's terrible
Sure.
ethically, but it's wonderful business.
Yeah. It's like stealth marketing, kind of.
Absolutely. You're creating your. Have you ever watched the movie Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. He would go and cause crimes so he could come and he could cover them. That's what Dave's
Right.
doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, good on him, I guess. If you can get, once we talked at the beginning of this show, and it's almost full circle. We talked at the beginning of this show about the maturity of
Wrestling fans. Yeah.
right?
Which isn't very high.
And so if we can go all the way from starting there to here,
emotional maturity, by the way, for the record. Emotional maturity.
What'd you say?
Emotional maturity of the wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we can start at the very top of the shows, talking about intergender wrestling, tying it in with the emotional maturity of fans, is it really any surprise that Dave Meltzer can basically get it on Twitter or get on the Observer and say whatever the fuck he wants and get people to believe it?
No. What's the difference?
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to Dave Meltzer. It sounds so bad because I'm not a big fan of his, so it sounds very bad. But get your news how you get your news. I don't really give a shit. But I would say, if Dave says one thing, don't just take it and believe it, which is why I was talking shit about him being the Trump of wrestling earlier. But, find some other sources. You know what I mean? Like, sure, Dave might be the number one wrestling journalist, whatever. He might be. He might very well be. I don't know. But he doesn't know everything. Okay? He doesn't. And he's not inside that locker room. He might have moles and leaks and whatever. But who are you going to believe? I don't know. But I do know.
Speaking of moles and leaks, you know that wrestlers have come out and said that they feed Meltzer false information on purpose.
Sure, I'm sure they do. Yeah, I mean, I believe
being
that.
the number one guy who said that.
Right. So there's, the whole Meltzer thing, man. It ruins. That's what I was saying. I love wrestling, but a lot of times the reason why I don't get into that stuff, into these journalists, is because a lot of times I don't think they're intentionally trying to ruin wrestling, but I think they do ruin it just so they can make $1. And I think that kind of sucks for people who. I don't know. It just kind of sucks for people who don't like that. You know what I mean? So, and you have to avoid it. It's like you and I are friends with a lot of people who like Dave, right?
Yeah,
and so, and they might be the type. They might just say, "Oh man, Dave said this," kind of randomly, and it's like, "Oh," and then if it does happen, and Dave was right, he told you. Yep. And not only that, but then they just ruined a whole fucking story for me because I had to hear them spoil it for me 2 months ago or whatever. And then if they're wrong and you say anything. Well, plans change, like you said earlier. So it's very like, he's got this strength. He's got everyone by the balls. And it's crazy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I don't, it bothers me sometimes, but because it is what it is. You kind of have to live with it because that's the thing. But the narrative, I don't have a problem with his reporting. Actually, let me not lie. I have a problem with his reporting, but my bigger problem is with the narrative he sells, because you have to take advantage, not advantage. You have to take responsibility for the things that you incur. And yes, grown people are grown people, and people grown people, right?
Sure.
We're gonna do what we want to go do, right?
Yeah.
If somebody went and watched a movie about murder and then they went out and murdered somebody, is it that director's fault? No, but I'm sure he understands this level of responsibility he incurs by creating a movie of such ilk. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But so let me tell you what the bet Jordan and I have, and I want to tell it to our listeners because I realize my shows have similar fan bases but different fan bases. But this is further our point. The bet I have with Jordan is this. So much of what I believe, and I believe Jordan is starting to see, that makes him think that he doesn't like Roman, or gives him the reasons that he doesn't like Roman, have everything to do with what's going on backstage with the announcers in the audience, and nothing to do with what Roman is actually doing himself.
Right.
So the bet we have is, for the next few months, maybe even until Money in the Bank, every Roman match he's gonna watch is gonna be on mute. And I want him to tell me after all that's over, everything you saw Roman do you think he's a heel or a face?
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Do you care about him less or more without the machine behind him? That's interesting because so much. I mean, God, we could fill a 3-hour show with why is Roman Reigns booed, right? We could
Yeah,
fill that
I
show.
don't want to.
But at some point, we could talk about how it started. We can, and a million different people have their opinions. But one fact that we all can agree on is it's gotten to the point where it's just commonplace. It is what it is. It's just people can't remember when the what chant started. I mean, some of us can, but a lot of people can't. But people what? That's just what they do, right? Can you tell me who's the first person to ever do the wave?
Fuck no.
But when at sporting events, people do the wave.
Yeah.
No explanations needed. So there are some things that crowds and fans just do that we don't. I guarantee you, people who were born from 2000 and older don't know where the Wu Chant come from. When people get chopped, they don't. I guarantee you, it hadn't hit their mind.
Could be, yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? And I could be wrong, but I guarantee you, a good amount of them don't. But whenever somebody does a knife edge chop at a wrestling show, what do people do?
Woo!
So you know what I'm saying? So there's certain things that we've been taught to do, certain responses we've been taught to make, and I'm not gonna go full on and jump out just completely out the window and say that we've been taught to boo Roman Reigns, but it's definitely been something that we've become accustomed to doing.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless if we think about it or not. Can I give you a perfect example?
Sure.
Royal Rumble 2 years ago. The one Randy Orton won. Me and you were there live.
Yeah.
I am one of Roman's biggest supporters. Right?
Yes.
The misnomer is that I'm one of his biggest fans. He's not one of my favorite wrestlers. Let me change that. He's one of my favorite wrestlers. He's not my favorite wrestler. So I'm a bigger supporter of his because I have to be than I am a fan of his. Nonetheless, I'm still a fan. When Roman came out in the Royal Rumble, after he had the match with Kevin Owens, or whoever it was that night, it
was Owens.
Yeah, for the Universal Championship, which he lost, by the way.
Yeah.
Was it the Universal title?
Yeah, Braun came out and that set that feud going.
Yes, thank you. So when Roman comes out at number 30, what was my response?
You were very confused by it. I remember that. Like, why? I don't like this. I get it. You're like, I get why they're doing this or whatever. I can't remember the exact response, but it was, weren't pleased.
You might
I can
not
tell you
remember
that.
my exact statement, but my exact statement to you was, I get why people hate Roman Reigns now.
Oh, yeah.
Did I not say that?
Yeah, you did.
So even at a show, I felt some disdain towards Roman Reigns.
Right.
I'm his biggest supporter. That's what a crowd can do to you.
Oh, yeah, I get that. I agree with you. I haven't ever gotten that way with him, but, you're
so apathetic to so much.
I am. I really am. And I think, although I will say it helps me because I'm able to really just kind of unpack things the way they're supposed to be unpacked a lot of times. Not all the times. There are some things that piss me off, but for the most part, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we wanted to talk about Daniel Bryan, then we got back on Roman Reigns, but the point still remains, it's really more about wrestling journalism than it is anything else. And the way people are taking what is their opinion and turning it into, this is what the WWE is doing.
Yep.
And that shit gets on my nerves, and I mean, me, I get after, we don't have to talk about this at all, but you saw me the other day on fucking Twitter getting after someone who was talking about, if we're booing Roman Reigns, why aren't we booing Charlotte? She's getting just the same push, blah, 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 blah. She wins everything, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, listen, Charlotte has gotten pushed very, very well. She's won multiple championships. She beat the streak, blah, blah, blah. But Jesus Christ. Anything to discredit someone else just to defend your guy, like, everything is like, it feels like everything has to be mutually exclusive with people. You know what I mean? We can only have one, and that's just drives me nuts.
And the hilarity of that, to me, is those same people are the same people who swear that that there shouldn't be one top guy, there should be a bunch of top guys.
Right.
That directly is going against what you say about other people.
Right.
Right. Charlotte can't be pushed because Becky and Sasha aren't getting pushed.
Right.
They can't all be pushed.
They can all be pushed.
And then I think a thing that people, this is going to sound really stupid, but I really don't think people think about it. I really, truly, in my soul, don't think people think about it. I don't think people realize that for one person to get pushed, somebody has to lose.
Yeah, that's kind of
right?
where that goes.
Which goes back to this Rusev Daniel Bryan thing. See how I put that? I brought it back. See how I did that? I'm a journalist.
Well, then I hate you. So
hey, I accept that. Daniel Bryan lost. We're not gonna care that Daniel Bryan just 2 days before got beat down by Big Cass. We don't care about that, right? We don't care that the whole match he was nursing his injuries from that fight, right? So, but the thing I don't understand is, I have, as much as I'm still baffled by a bunch of it, I have accepted and even support Daniel Bryan, but I've accepted the support Daniel Bryan gets, that the crowd wants him, despite everybody else. It pisses me off because the guy that the goalposts are moved for people think the goalposts move for Roman Reigns. They really move for Daniel Bryan, but that's another conversation. But dude has so much support that people don't want him to ever fail. Okay.
Right.
I accept it. I don't agree with it, but I accept it. Cool. In the same breath, y'all been begging, pleading, and bitching about Rusev for almost a year now getting a push. And he gets one, and you're against it because it was against Daniel Bryan?
Well, I think that's a really good point, because I think that in their own little world, I think the people who are angry about that think that they're being trolled. As in, of course, you're going to give us one but take away another. Because they want both, but they don't want to sacrifice one to get the other. They want Rusev to go out there and beat up, like, Jobber A.
Yeah.
They want Daniel Bryan to beat Jobber B. Not Jobber, but just, guys they don't care about.
Yeah.
So they don't want them to pit against each other, but the reality is, in the scope of wrestling and WWE, they're all going for the same thing. So at the end of the day, someone that you love is not going to win. Okay? There will only be one Money in the Bank winner. And it may not even be on SmackDown. So you're going to have to think about who's in it right now, right? You got Braun, you got Finn, you got Rusev, and you got The Miz. Tell me, of those four, is there anyone who doesn't like those four? Someone
by alignment, Miz is a heel, so people might not like him.
Yeah,
Miz has earned people's respect. Yes,
right. So three of those guys are losing, and there's more to be added to this fucking thing.
Yeah.
So it's just not how it works. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of great performers, and only certain ones are gonna get as far as you want them to get. It's almost, it reminds me, like, when I was watching wrestling in the 90s, I really loved Owen Hart.
Okay.
Owen Hart's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
But God rest his soul. But
God rest his soul. Yes. It
Owen
was 20 years this week.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But Owen Hart, he never won a world championship.
Nope.
He was a tag team champion, European champion, intercontinental champion.
King of the Ring.
But never won the world title. And you always go back in time and you think, man, think about all the greats who never won a world championship. Owen Hart, Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake, Scott Hall, Mr. Perfect. I mean, there's so many guys.
For the record, yes, people who are going to sit here and be completely analytical. Mr. Perfect won AWA World Champion.
Yes, he did.
We're talking WWE.
Yes.
We're talking WWE, WCW. You know what we're talking about.
No, yeah. And then from, that time period, the guy, I mean, so that's, look at all that. And then you kind of compare those guys and their skills to someone like the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Okay, who was abysmal, but he was just, everyone loved the guy.
Psycho Sid.
Jesus Christ. Psycho Sid. Yeah, I mean, and to some degree, even though he was completely over, Hogan, WWF Hogan was basically punch, kick, leg drop. I mean, that's basically what he was.
And a body slam.
Oh, my bad. And a boot. I think he did a boot too.
He did a boot, and when he was heel, he did a back rake.
Okay. All right. He's got 6 moves to do. But, like, some guys are going to get there, some are not. That's just the reality of it. Like, I know some people love Sami Zayn, and Sami Zayn's great, and he may one day win the WWE Championship. I don't see it, but he might. There's a lot of guys in that company.
Yep.
And so it just goes back to the whole thing, this Money in the Bank thing. Just because Daniel Bryan lost to Rusev doesn't mean Daniel Bryan's not getting a push.
Or he's not going to be in the Money in the Bank ladder match.
That too. I mean, I don't think he will. I'll say that. But I do think that you make a good point because there's still open spots. They could always do one of those things where it's like the losers of all the qualifiers have a match for the final spot.
They've
done stuff like that before. Yeah.
They just did it in February for the Elimination Chamber.
That's right. They've done that kind of thing before.
Yes.
So let it play out. And even if he doesn't get a spot, you really honestly think, does anybody really honestly believe, other than Dave Meltzer apparently, and the people that follow him,
which is a lot of the crowd,
yeah, that Daniel Bryan is not going to be presented as important? I mean, the dude wrestled AJ Styles his second week back or whatever.
I just want to know when one loss started to mean doom for people.
I just wanted to know when wins and losses ever fucking mattered.
Don't do that. Because we're going to get so much hate. Because I completely agree with you. But, boy, when you say that, you want people to come out the woodwork?
Come on then with it. Let's go.
Oh, my God. Well, okay then. Next episode, it's the wins don't matter. Wins and losses don't matter episode.
No, the last 5 seconds, I'm just going to say Jinder Mahal, and then we can hit the stop button because it's going to be over.
Well,
it don't matter.
To use a more relevant and liked person, Chris Jericho is a perfect person.
Okay.
Because Chris Jericho let's use a perfect example. Chris Jericho in New Japan is looked at as a superstar. He ain't never going to win a match over there.
No.
Ever. They don't care. Because it's how you present it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong, and I don't wins and losses don't matter, but I will agree that sometimes the way you win or lose matters.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I get that. Yeah, that's fine. But I just
for example, Kalisto has a win over Braun Strowman.
Yes, he does.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks Kalisto's better than Braun Strowman, but he has a win over him.
No, he just kicked him in the knee.
And he fell in the dumpster.
Yeah.
So that win doesn't matter, but the way Kalisto won that match matters because even though Kalisto would say, I beat him, bro, you kicked him in the dumpster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we could have this conversation all day long. I love that conversation because I'm 100% right there with you.
Well, we won't do it this time.
If wins and losses mattered, wouldn't they still have the SmackDown Top 10 list? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to talk about that. My bad. Anything else you got to talk about before you want to talk about Big Cass real quick?
We could talk about Big Cass.
How big of an idiot he is?
Fucking dumbass that he is, yeah.
And you know what? I supported that dude. Because I like new stars. I like people who haven't got chances getting chances. And I felt like Cass had he had a very decent run in NXT by himself when He Who Shall Not Be Named Part 2 was his partner and he got hurt. And Cass did well for himself. And Cass is not a tremendously terrible wrestler, but he's not a tremendously good wrestler. He's perfectly average.
He's
Maybe
Kevin
even
Nash.
slightly. Well, Kevin Nash knows how to work. Cass don't know how to work.
Well, I know, but you know what I mean. That's like
Sure.
kind of what you get from him.
Sure. Well, no, I was gonna say Test, but Test know how to work too. So never mind. But anyway, but yes. But I love to see people who haven't got opportunities prior to this get opportunities. and this was an opportunity for Cass. And more
Yeah.
importantly, it's an opportunity for Bryan to help make Cass. Because that's when you're a superstar, is when you help make superstars. That's a true superstar, right?
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, just in case you don't know, a couple weeks ago, Big Cass brought out a little person to portray Daniel Bryan.
Well, to the untrained eye, it did look like Daniel Bryan.
So fucked up.
I'm joking.
So fucked up. Anyway, he brings out a little person to portray Daniel Bryan. And he's, doing his whole thing. The initial idea was for him to give the little person the big boot, and that was supposed to be the end of it.
Yes.
And Cass wanted to do more, and he was told specifically no. And so he was so adamant, he even went to Vince supposedly and said, I want to do this, and Vince told him no. So when he got out there and he did the whole thing, he gives him the boot, and then he decides to do more anyway by throwing the punches on the little person.
Yes.
So apparently he's in some trouble backstage. We don't know the extent of that trouble. He was on TV. Was he on TV on SmackDown? I didn't catch it.
Well,
post SmackDown, right? Or something.
To add to the story, from what the reports again, Bryan was supposed to come out and confront him that night. After he did that, Bryan didn't. On top of that, the reports are that Cass was supposed to win that match against Bryan at Backlash, but Bryan won. And then, yes, he was not on SmackDown Tuesday. He did a post video.
That's right. So they did the post video after Bryan lost, talking about how it was him or whatever.
He indirectly caused Bryan to lose because.
So I don't know what maybe the punishment was him losing at Backlash and not appearing on SmackDown this week. I don't know. It could have already been handled. I don't know. But regardless, holy shit. Like, this is the same kind of stuff that we talk about when guys pick up their ball and go home, except he didn't pick up his ball and go home. He basically threw his ball in Vince's face and said, fuck off. I'm going to do what I want to do. That ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm Big Cass and I can do what I want.
Now, it's happened before. From what I understand, if you go back to Hart and Austin from Mania 13, the blade job supposedly wasn't supposed to happen. That was on them in the ring. They decided to do that. I don't know if that's true.
Undertaker at WrestleMania 27, the chair shot to the head.
Right. So it's not like guys haven't gone into business for themselves yet, but those guys are those guys. And Big Cass, at this moment in time, really isn't anybody and doesn't have the kind of clout to go out there and do that, especially when you're just getting this opportunity. You need to be crossing your T's and dotting your I's when you're out there in the fucking ring. He's an idiot. It's just a stupid thing to do.
And the optics, dog. It's one thing to say, bro, look, in the world we live in, and we've really gone, I like how all this is coming full circle. We've really talked about how sensitive the world is. Bro, it's one thing to big boot a midget, dog, but you beat up unnecessarily, I'm sorry, a little person. I think the term little person is actually more degrading than midget, but I respect what some of them want to be called.
Yeah.
They want to be called little people. So, but it not only was it dumb to go against it, but the one time you chose to say, well, I think this will work, was a really bad time to choose to do that.
Yeah.
It
wasn't, there's no awareness.
Now can you believe the same people who are laughing at Cass and saying he's an idiot for this are the same people who say, well, Roman should just do what he wants and go against what Vince is saying because, Roman's getting booed. He needs to just go out there and turn heel on his own and do this. Well, if Cass got in trouble, what's going to happen to Roman?
Yeah,
Roman's not untouchable. He did get suspended for a wellness violation, guys. So it's a different locker room. Titus O'Neil got suspended 2 months for pushing a guy.
No, yeah, I agree.
This is not the same locker room.
It really isn't. And that's really the whole thing. Like, dude, I'm just baffled by some of the stuff some of these guys do. Especially in this case, like, if you went, like, I get you want to be adamant and you're passionate about it, but if you get told no by your boss, literally, you were smart enough to go ask him, right? Like, it feels like, okay, there's some kind of like, all right, I'll go over the writers because I'm so adamant about this and passionate about it. I go talk to Vince. You go talk to Vince, and he says no, and then you're still going to go out there. it's just,
Here's
I don't
it.
know.
This isn't about Cass, but this is basically what we've talked about all show. A tweet from Chris P. Lettuce. Daniel Bryan loses one match. He's being buried, and they already ruined his return. And he should quit WWE. Roman Reigns has a losing record on pay-per-view in 2017. Stop pushing him down our throats. Why does he always win everything and always bury his opponents?
Yeah.
Modern wrestling fans just love making up their own narratives and sticking with them no matter how wrong they are.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it's not like it wouldn't be the first time. And people do this, not just wrestling fans, man. I mean, people do this in all sorts of ways and all sorts of mediums. And I think the best thing that can be done is, we're not saviors here, but I think it's important to try and at least try and explain people off the ledge with some of this stuff.
Well, you know what? You know who's going to save us all?
Who?
Dean Ambrose.
Think so?
Hell no.
You know who's going to save us all, actually?
Thanos?
No, well, that's fair. September 1st in Chicago, CM Punk. CM Punk.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I'll just leave it there.
You know what's going to happen.
What?
So, for those of you listening who don't know what the news is, CM Punk is officially affiliated with All In as he's signing. All In's in Chicago already, but he's doing a special signing and meet and greet at the 1 Hour Tease show, which is a kind of de facto the home away from home for the All In people, All In group in Chicago, and he's going to do it the day before, which leads to the thought process that maybe Punk, and I can call him CM Punk now because it's wrestling related. Right. This wasn't wrestling related to be Phil Brooks, but this is wrestling related. But the thought process is that Punk might be affiliated in some form with the show, All In show that Saturday. But what's going to happen is he ain't going to wrestle, but he's going to come out his mic with go to sleep. That's just what's going to happen. Probably Cody.
Yeah, I figure it'll be some kind of just confrontation.
Sure. Because my thought process, I'm fantasy booking, forgive me, but the only thing that makes sense for this show is Cody versus Flip Gordon. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Right.
With the whole book flip movement, flip isn't booked movement, and then if you watch Being the Elite and what's been happening on the shows, Flip and Brandon got really uncomfortably close. Now Brandon broke a collarbone. I know you're gonna see some videos of Flip nursing her to health. It's just gonna happen. That's what they're doing, right? They're marketing geniuses. All of them are. I give them all the credit in the world for this. But how perfect would it be that the biggest heel in that whole space, because none of them get booed, but Cody really. And the reason Cody gets booed is because he's an elite WWE guy. That's the funny thing. So, effectively they're booing WWE when they boo Cody. But anyway, Flip and Cody come out, ref bump, this, that, and the other. Cult of Personality hits, Punk comes out, acts like he's gonna dap Cody up because they got history, and then go to sleep, Flip hits him with whatever his finisher is. I don't know. I don't watch enough Flip Gordon. Pins him. Crowd goes crazy. It's going to happen.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Flip will get on there and he'll pour some milk in a bowl and some cereal on top and talk about how the earth is flat. That'll be the end of All In.
And Flip is in the best of the Super Juniors, right, this year in New Japan. I wonder how he thinks he's going to get there because Japan's on the other side of the world.
Well, he's going to get in a plane. You get in a plane, it's just going to go in a straight line. They're not doing any kind of curvature because the Earth's flat.
Oh man! All right, man. You got anything else you want to holler at, or you want to go and get out of here?
Yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up. We managed to get a show out of it. We were worried we weren't going to get a full. I think we got a pretty good amount of quality out of this.
I think this was a very good show.
From a
standpoint, I think.
All thanks to me.
We need to. Well, I was about to put you over, but never mind. Hey, man, tell them where they can find you, bro.
Yeah, you can find me at Outsider Curvin.
Get it together.
What's that?
Get it together.
Yeah, I know. You can find me at Outsider Curvin on Twitter. I do have a potential writing venture coming up. I might be writing some columns here, but I'm going to save that until I get it all set up. So just know that be on the lookout here in maybe another week or two. I might be writing somewhere special. I'll let everybody know. That's it for me, though. That's all I got.
So, let me take these next 20 minutes to get my stuff over real quick. No, not 20. It's gonna be like more like 15. Um, you can find your boy at It's Ray Cash, REY as in Mysterio, CASH as in dollars. You can find our podcast at Outsiders Edge SS. Don't forget to follow everybody on the Social Suplex Podcast Network at Social Suplex. You have your New Japan Pro Wrestling show with Keeping It Strong Style at KI Strong Style with Josh and Jeremy. You have the Wrestling Watch with uh our our esteemed and excommunicated kind of sorta, I guess you could say, brother Caleb at Wrestling Watch SS covers
Oh, we
Impact and Ring of
promoting him
Honor.
now? We promoting him?
Well, I'm promoting the brand, bro. I'm the nice guy of the group.
Yeah, good
You're
for
the
you.
heel.
I am. Thank you.
Uh, um, you also have One Nation Radio, the flagship, which is at One Nation Radio. Yeah, One Nation Radio, yeah. But it's only by Rich now. James is in hiatus right now from wrestling. Um, Ricky and Clive, our good friends from across the pond, at Ricky and Clive, who Carl should be finally, now that he has time, making an appearance on.
Yeah, I'm probably trying to do that sometime in the next couple weeks.
We have a new podcast on added to the family on the network. Grown Men Watch This Shit, which is an indie podcast hosted by Chris and James. Holla at them. I haven't got a chance to listen to the show yet, but I will. I'm not the biggest indie mark, but gotta help out the family. And I have some super secret news. Now I'm not going to announce it yet, but there might be something else in the works for a friend of mine in the podcast. Not me. I got enough, but a good friend of mine who I'm very excited about. I'll tell you more about that as it comes. Don't forget my other show with one Jordan Fox, the World Class Radio. Yes, changed today because we are technically a radio show now. Follow us at World Class Daily. Follow him at Fox the Podcaster. We are also sponsored by formerly Imperial Wrestling Revolution, now changed to World Class Revolution, or World Class Pro Wrestling, out of Oklahoma. We are sponsored by a actual wrestling company. By the way, I don't know if you heard, Carl, but they got a TV deal now.
Yeah, I did hear that. It was
Kansas
NBC
and Missouri, and we're
Joplin.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with Joplin.
Yes. So the brand is growing, and we're affiliated with that. Also, you can find the World Class Podcast, World Class Radio, on thechairshot.com, among other places. But you can also find me. I have started writing again for the Chair Shot. First column is out. You can find it somewhere on my Twitter or the World Class Radio Twitter at World Class Daily. I write Mondays, Tuesdays, so yeah, look out for that. Yeah, I don't know what else is there for me to
I don't know. You plug literally everything.
The playoffs are in. It's conference championship time. The NBA lottery is coming up. I don't know. I can plug some more stuff if
I'm about to kill you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But that's all I got. But yeah, man, we appreciate y'all continuing to listen, continuing to support.
Tell your friends.
Tell a friend who's gonna tell a friend.
Yeah.
But no, man, the listens for our pod and the listens for the brand in general have been tremendous, and they continue to grow. So we owe that to nobody else but you guys. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing us to give our very controversial and different opinions. We were gonna do it anyway, but just thank you. Anything else you got, man?
That's it, guys. We'll be back next week. Not sure what we'll be talking about, but there's always something.
Yes, we are. It's the wins and losses don't matter.
All right, so get ready.
No, yeah, I might have to sit out that one. I can only take so much heat.
Fair enough.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take it easy.